I do just want to say thank you. I received hundreds of cards and emails and videos, which were a lot of fun, and just so many people praying, and then word came to me that people were in my yard each night at my house praying, and you spend your life like I have, my adult life, in ministry, ministering to other people. You know what that's like, but you don't necessarily know what it's like when it comes back the other direction. And it's very humbling to have that many people praying for me. And it's good to be home. There were a few nights where I didn't know if I'd make it home. I didn't know if I'd live till sun up, just because of various circumstances and surgeries and stuff that I had. I owe part of it, I think, to the rivalry between Oklahoma and Texas. I didn't want to die in Texas, so I'm back. You know, one of the things that I've said often, and I really believe this, is one of the keys to the Christian life is not to waste our sorrows. We're all going to have sorrows. I mean, mine is a pretty vicious one. But we're all going to have sorrows of different kinds. The key is whether we waste them or not, and how we allow God to shape us through those sorrows, and how we are able to invest our sorrows in other people. It was just amazing to me. It became nearly a game with me of who God would bring to my room. So many Christians that needed encouragement, as well as those who were not Christian. And I joked early one morning with Ginger that I thought I could, from 1 to 5 of the morning, I could probably set up a Christian counseling business in the hospital. My room was just full of people coming and going, and I was doing marriage counseling, which I don't particularly like, but all kinds of counseling for people, in-law counseling, counseling of getting into the country, getting out of the country, all kinds of things that God allowed me to be a part of. And I don't know. I'm never going to be able to adequately thank everyone for your prayers. To see so many people come on an afternoon and knowing this is the tip of the iceberg of people that contacted me personally and told me they were praying for me. It's an amazing, amazing thing in my life. And no one knows what our future is. The first time they gave me a diagnosis, they gave me 8 weeks. And I'm at, about 10 weeks, 9 weeks right now. So I've already beat the odds of the first doctor. And they said without treatment, it would be that long. With treatment, maybe a year. It is terminal. It's stage 4 at this point, liver cancer. But it's on the gallbladder also. It's in the bile ducts. It's in the lymph nodes. So by all accounts, it's terminal. Anything they do is simply to prolong life. There was a point where I had to be released from Santa Barbara to check into MD Anderson. It's complicated transferring hospitals between states, evidently, and neither one of them wanted to incur the liability. So they wanted me to check out, be discharged here in Santa Barbara, and then to go to Houston. And so I was out of the hospital for about 2.5, 3 days, I guess. And what they didn't know in Santa Barbara is I developed an abscess, a severe infection. In fact, I've been on IV antibiotics until, 2 days, yesterday? Yesterday, I guess, was the last day. So the abscess is gone now. But they didn't give me adequate pain medicine. And so we were trying to deliberate with family whether I could make it to Houston or not. I've been with a lot of people as they died. Pastor Phil's been with a lot of people as they died. and I didn't think I could make it till the morning. So we called hospice because I didn't want to die in agony, and they let me know of how I could go in hospice for a day or two and then come off hospice. And so they loaded me up with morphine. I don't know how many shots until it was manageable. And then Ashley, who grew up in our church, the hospice nurse, flew with me to make sure I made it to Houston along with my family. And then when I got to Anderson, they gave me Dilaudid, which is 7 times more powerful than morphine, which they'd been holding out on me. But then we started these emergency processes. I had 9 surgeries. 2 of them, I guess, maybe were surgical procedures because I was somewhat awake. But all the procedures, they lasted anywhere from 40 minutes to 4 hours. So some of them were fairly major surgeries. All had to do with a bile duct, rerouting that, and stents and drains through my ribs. They went back in the same incision 4 times, which got to be a little aggravating to me. Finally, the last time they were going to do it, I wouldn't sign the consent form, which created quite a stir with a lot of doctors coming. And I told them at that point, they go, "Why aren't you going to sign the consent?" I go, well, you have a math problem, and it hasn't occurred to you yet, but this is essentially a math problem. They go, well, we don't understand. I go, well, when I first came in, you said I had 8 weeks if untreated. We're at week 5, and you have not treated the cancer, and you just told me it's going to be another 3 weeks dealing with these drains that you keep putting through my ribs. That fundamentally is a math problem. You've ran the clock out on me. And so they go, well, that makes sense. Let's call your, what's the cancer oncologist? And he said, I can treat it without, just leave the thing open. So I have a little bag here on my chest that's open, and I'll start treating the cancer. So I've had 2 chemotherapies. The plan is that in coming to Bakersfield, I'll do the chemotherapy here for December, January, maybe quite a bit into February. I'll go back for a month to Houston for radiation treatment. And then they'll do immunotherapy, which is very targeted. And so next several months, there will be therapy. People have asked me, a lot of people have asked me, what have I learned through this? I'm still processing it, what God might be teaching me. But I've learned I'm not in control. I already kind of sensed that, but I've learned that as a rock bed lesson, that I'm not in control, and neither are you. I mean, I worked out, walked and jogged 4 miles the day before I went into the hospital. Had no idea that I was sick. I just thought I had indigestion of some kind, that they'd take my gallbladder out and I'd preach on Sunday. We're not in control. I've also learned that God's direct answers to prayer aren't the most important thing in life. That His presence is more important. And I've been privileged to enjoy some sweet, sweet moments of fellowship with our Savior. Even with my family, before I left for Texas, I thought I was going to die that night. There was every indication that I was. And so I called Phil to come down and called all my family. And Matt came from Southern California. And I called each one of my 10 grandchildren, one by one, to my side. And I spent about 10 to 12 minutes with each one, giving them what I called a blessing, talking to them about what I perceived at this point in their life, their strengths, their weaknesses, how God might use them, what temptations they might tend to face because of their personality. And it was a sweet, sweet time that I think it marked me, but I think it'll mark my grandchildren for life. And that would not have taken place if I hadn't been sick. And it would not have taken place if I hadn't been convinced that my time was short, that I was dying that night. And so that's the goodness of God's timing, of not wasting our sorrows, of using them. This came on me so suddenly that, I don't know, this is probably a vain thing, and I've been trying to flush all that out of my life. But it's a preacher thing. Phil could probably testify to this. You want your last sermon to be really significant. My last sermon was on the Church of Thyatira. Who's going to remember the Church of Thyatira? I mean, come on. I'd never preached on Thyatira. That's the last sermon. And so the next sermon I'd already written and was planning on preaching if I hadn't ended up with the diagnosis that I did, is on Revelation chapter 4, which is one of the great, 4 and 5 are the two greatest chapters, I think, in the book of Revelation, two of the greatest in the whole Bible. Revelation 4, you get through with the 7 churches like I've been preaching on and the guys have been preaching on. And it's a description of the throne room of what's going on in heaven right now. It describes these angelic beings, 10,000 times 10,000s, and these 4 living beings, which are angelic beings, and the 24 elders, which I think represent the tribes of Jacob and the apostles, both the Old and the New Testament, and the thousands of people on this crystal sea, worshiping worthy is God. And I wrote the message and was excited about preaching it because I think it's a powerful, it's such a powerful passage. I wrote it with a lot of detail, more than usual, because I already had indigestion, had some pain, and in the back of my mind I thought, what if this is something different than what I think it is? And so I wrote the message with enough detail. I think that Andrew can preach it someday. And who knows, God may extend my life and I may preach it. We don't know. We don't know what God's will is. We just don't know. But again, just thank you for coming out. Thank you for your cards, your letters, so many kind things. I want to thank my family. They've just been, we flew back there on a private plane. Someone blessed us with that, which I was blown away by that. So Andrew and Matthew came and spent a week. I think Kelsey, between Santa Barbara and Texas, she was there 4 or 5 weeks, probably. Faith, my daughter, was with me all 6 weeks there in Texas and came back. And so we ought to thank Brian because he was taking care of 2 little girls during that time, as well as the church. These are important times for our church. I think that part of understanding God's will is we always want to know why things happen. I think that's probably down the list of what we need to know. What happened? That's significant. And then the timing of when it happens. I don't think we should ignore that. I don't think it's any accident that we're in a transition in the life of our church, and that we're this far along in this transition, that we're voting on Brian this coming Sunday. We're that far along in the transition where I can retire. And start to say I can die. I guess we can always die, but, and the transition is whole. That these guys, in my opinion, and I believe in the majority of the church's opinion, are ready. And I was thinking just a night or two ago. I mean, Phil and I made this decision pretty arbitrarily to begin our transition. We didn't know where that was going to take us, necessarily who it was going to take us to, but we knew we were coming to the end. And we could have just as easily arbitrarily said 70 as we did 68. And we would just now be starting a transition. And imagine the angst that we would feel as a church. I can only imagine what I would feel as a pastor not having completed this transition. And so I think that we need to thank God for that. We need to honor God for protecting us as a church and securing the future, I think, of our church for decades and decades to come, irregardless of me or irregardless of Phil. God bless you.
Thank you, Dad.